7 The Days Long Gone is an isometric CRPG with a focus on stealth mechanics. You take on the role of an infamous master thief called Teriel as you parkour, sneak, steal, lockpick, and fight your way across the prison island of Pe. At least, that's the main idea of the game. You don't start on Pe. There's a small prelude/tutorial to play through first. Your first brief mission is to rob a mansion. Robbing it is what soon gets you sent to the prison island of Pe. Before your arrival there, you also wind up with a passenger inside of your brain. His name is Ardenak. He's a sentient AI, and he tells you that you've been chosen for a secret mission on Pe. The mansion job was just a setup to set you on that course. The story overall is a dystopian one, which focuses on humanity's future. There's currently an evil emperor ruling over everyone with an iron fist. His evilness is rather obvious. For example, at one point, you'll see this.
Mark my words. You will suffer for this. Your agonizing execution will serve as a dire warning to those who would betray me.
But that's actually not a spoiler because you'll see a public execution at the start of the game in his name. Obviously, in a dystopia like this, where so many people are miserable and coughing all the time, there's probably going to be a power struggle of some sort. And there is. And of course, you can influence that struggle as the story's protagonist. I won't spoil the details, but I will say that the story had some good points and bad points. There were some nice sci-fi elements to it. The lore for the setting was decent, and some moments in the storyline were interesting. However, at the core of it, the bad guy was just a bad guy, and the dystopia was, for the most part, uninteresting and bleak in a rather bland sort of way. Random NPCs are also uninteresting. They have little to say and nothing memorable. However, they still usually fill their generic one-note roles just fine. Damsel in distress, random gossip, old flame, or whatever else. There were a few mild attempts at humor, such as a guy who wanted socks, but I didn't laugh even once. They also don't fully lean into silliness. For example, you're supposed to be able to wear an outfit set and then get recognized as part of that group if you have the full outfit. For shits and giggles, I decided to dress him up in the prostitute gear, but that didn't do anything. No funny lines, no nothing, although he could wear it. I ended my game early due to bugs, so it's possible that there are some funny moments and maybe some side characters also become more interesting as the game goes on. Maybe I would have liked some of those characters eventually. However, based on the game's overall dialogue and characterizations, I kinda doubt that would have happened. As for the main characters, Teriel and his passenger Ardenak, they're better. They're consistent in their personalities, and I like them well enough. Teriel is a little cocky, sarcastic, but tender-hearted, no matter your own choices in the game.
Why would anyone willingly live in an awful place like this? Not surprised he's grouchy, all these technomagi poking around in his head and smashing his demon.
He has voice dialogue, which sometimes pops up when you speak to NPCs, when you investigate things, and during the plotline. These lines work well to reflect his personality. Meanwhile, the other mind in his brain, Ardenak, is serious, observant, and slightly sarcastic.
Ah, this looks promising.
It would be petty for me to say I told you so, but I've possessed humans for too long. You've tarnished me.
This is shown in a few ways, through pop-up dialogue during the plotline, and is usually done in direct, scripted conversation with Teriel. However, the player can also prompt some brief conversations with Ardenak on several subjects. Unfortunately, though, this option for Teriel to initiate dialogue isn't huge. The same options for conversation appeared even after I significantly advanced the plotline and visited different areas. Item descriptions are also written from the perspective of Ardenak describing them to Teriel, but they seem too sassy to me, and not in line with Ardenak's usually more placid, sarcastic personality, so I usually ignored the item descriptions. Bugs ruined the game for me. Eventually, I lost patience with 7 and decided that the game just wasn't worth finishing. This was because little went as it should have gone.
Are you a puppeteer?
Perhaps I'd like to make it my business.
Ha! Big mistake. I'll deal with you first.
And eventually, I felt that putting in more time just would probably wind up being a waste. Bugs affected almost everything. Exploring often didn't go well. Levels in the map often clipped through each other, which led to odd visual effects as I played. Meanwhile, Tyrael sometimes became completely stuck, and every time he got stuck, I had to reload my last save. This even happened in the beginning zone. It was difficult to get into the flow of the game when that kept happening. Similarly, when I got a cutscene, that should have been a neat moment, but the game glitched. The scene played multiple times in a row, and that made what should have been a cool cutscene come across in an awkward way.
He was sent to Pech on a mission of great importance. I hope our theory about this task.
Just who is this? What makes him so damn important?
I suppose you have a right to know what you're risking your life for.
It's not like I was given...
Fighting was also buggy, and mediocre too. It was easy to win fights, pretty much click to win. You could just spam it. You could also load up healing items in the middle of a fight, which, is pretty typical. It didn't involve much strategy though, and you couldn't really use the lay of the land to your benefit. Clicking to win was the optimal thing to do. And as I said, it was easy, but that's when Tyrael didn't stop responding to all attempts to get him to move. And by the way, I mentioned earlier that I often reloaded a save due to getting stuck. That's relevant in the fighting section too, because if I'd been fighting, despite my saving after killing the enemies, they would still respawn. Needing to redo those fights due to this bug combo, getting stuck, and then the dead reanimating weirdly, was tedious. Enemies also respawn when you leave zones, which is awkward in context. For example, here, I killed a bunch of cult members. There's a side quest where you can inform someone's brother that you killed the cult. He seems slightly upset that you denied him the chance for revenge, but he also mentions that he doesn't hunt human beings anyway. Later on, the cult members are back up and walking around. Despite these problems, I continued onward, yet after a while, jumping around and exploring felt humdrum. This wasn't just due to the bugs, but also due to what I was finding. A big problem was simply that there just wasn't much worthwhile loot to find. Most of it was repetitive crap for crafting. Small bells, broken watches, and so on. Yet sometimes there was a worthwhile item, such as a keycard, hidden in the numerous containers scattered all over the zone I was in. This made hunting for loot pretty tedious instead of an interesting adventure. It also often didn't make sense in context. For example, why would an ultra-secure base have tons of containers filled with literal junk? By the way, speaking of what you could find, why was one of the rarest things to find, strips of leather, so incredibly rare? It was just crafting material and made of something common. Why couldn't Tyrael just use a knife on the leather he made or obtained? Why couldn't a tailor sell leather strips commonly? After all, they sold all kinds of garments, including ones made of leather, and shoes too. Also, why were they called stripes instead of strips? I'm guessing that was a typo because I did spot several in the game. However, I'm mentioning this item in particular because these strips or stripes are needed to craft and upgrade to increase Tyrael's carry weight. So being unable to easily obtain these strips added to the bothersome nature of dumpster diving, because Tyrael frequently became weighted down if I lazily tried to hit Q to just loot all without sorting it when I encountered a container. After all, sorting it made it more of a pain. It was easier just to hit Q. Simultaneously, on top of constantly finding trash and not treasure, many paths also led to nothing interesting. As a result, exploring usually felt fruitless. Plus, since there was that danger of getting stuck, striking out and exploring at random became less and less appealing the more I tried to do it. Since bugs were constantly interrupting that already not so great experience, my frustration kept growing, and eventually I decided not to explore at random any longer. I still wanted to finish the game though, so I decided that I'd complete the main quests and only do whatever side quests were along this beeline. I looked up the endings and found out that there are 4, and only one required the player to do certain quests. But I didn't care about that ending, so I figured this plan worked fine. However, I soon encountered yet another bug, and this one was decently big because it significantly affected my playthrough and undid a lot of effort. The bug affected crafting. There are 2 crafting stations in the game which can be upgraded to Tier 3. One is an alchemy station, which lets you make consumables. The other is more useful. It's a standard crafting station, which lets you make many different types of things. Armor, weaponry, upgrades for both, traps, and more. But an important key item can only be made at it: advanced lockpicks. Advanced lockpicks are particularly important to craft because Tyrael's ability to bypass locked doors is tied to them. Some doors in the game can only be opened with techno lockpicks. They're the best ones in the game and you can't buy them. So to me, upgrading the crafting station was an important task to complete. Not only would it let me get through whatever doors I needed to get through, but this is a stealth-themed game about a master thief who focuses on sneaking around and picking locks. And I do like getting into CRPGs, so for a Master Thief, this felt very appropriate. This meant that while getting all of the materials was a chore, it was still a chore I did. I upgraded the crafting station to Tier 3, and since I was at it anyway, I went ahead and upgraded the alchemy station too. I also grabbed every recipe I could find to make sure that I found the recipes to make these techno lockpicks and everything else that might be relevant. The map will show you where recipes are, but not which ones are where. Each one also only appears once in a specific location in the game. So I did everything there, and then the game erased that progress. It suddenly lost track of the fact that I had gained the techno lockpick recipe. Tyrael starts out with the ability to make metal lockpicks, but these are the weakest type of lockpick. Once you find the recipe for the techno lockpicks, then you're only supposed to be able to craft those from then on because they've been replaced by superior technology. That meant the ability to make the techno ones was just totally erased by this bug that reverted me back to Tier 1 lockpicks. Since each recipe only spawns once, I couldn't get it again. I got it, it was gone, but the game forgot I got it in a different area of the code. It disappearing from my crafting list permanently barred me from being able to access many of the difficult locked doors in my playthrough since I couldn't get it again. By the way, I did double check this problem. After all, there is a lining type that will let Tyrael upgrade his thief skills, and I did try to use that, but that did nothing. So I checked online afterward and found out that yes, you definitely need those techno lockpicks. Tyrael's lockpicking skill doesn't matter when it comes to bypassing these advanced locks, but the quality of his tools matters. At that point, I had had enough of this game. That crafting bug had been an unpleasant surprise, but it was the fact that it was a surprise that really bothered me. I didn't want to put more hours into a game that was so-so and broke in ways which surprised me, especially because it already crashed often. So that was basically the straw that broke the camel's back. After even the crafting station went wonky, the idea that the next buggy surprise could be a completely game-ending bug didn't seem far-fetched, and I just didn't want to put in the time. The look and the sound. The game's visuals were also frequently affected by bugs. Constant clipping was an issue. Sometimes NPCs also got stuck in their pathfinding. I think the clipping, in addition to needing to constantly manually rotate the camera, was why I often got a little bit of a headache. I usually don't have that with isometric games, but 3D games, especially FPS, will do that for me, so it was weird to have it happen in this game. This meant that while it looked nice enough in assets, it was unpleasant for me and often looked odd. The game's sound was a positive, though. Its music and sound effects all fit its world well, and the voice actors chosen also fulfilled their roles well. However, it was hard to feel that that was amazing when so much was going wrong in the game. If the game itself was better, I think the sound would have helped elevate it, but with all of its buggy problems, that kind of feels like a side note. Which leads me to final thoughts. If it functioned as it should have and wasn't filled with bugs, then I know I would have finished it. I probably would rate it fairly well in the end too. Yet, as it stands, its bugs ruin the fun for me. This makes rating it fairly a difficult issue, because giving it a 1 feels both harsh and misleading when it has many good elements to it, it's not completely unplayable, and that low rating wouldn't be based on multiple factors. Yet at the same point, rating it on other things feels inappropriate. A 4 out of 10, for example, feels too generous since its bugs overwhelmed everything else and were bad enough to cause me to want to stop playing the game entirely, despite how much I generally like isometric CRPGs and have patience for them. Given that, I don't feel like it shouldn't be anything but a 1 or a 2. At the same point, I feel like that would be unfair. Plus, this game came out in 2017. This review's happening about 6 years later, so I doubt that the bugs in it are ever going to be fixed. On top of all of that, this bug problem is huge, more so than I've even covered, because when I looked into the bugs I experienced, and also videos of the ending, since I did want to know how the story could wrap up, I kept noticing that others experienced both similar and different bugs. So if you do play this buggy game, then it's at your own risk for sure. You may find the bugs you experience tolerable or not, and you may experience problems that I did or didn't, or both. After some time considering the problem in this light, I decided that I'm going to add a new category to my ratings, an override of the 1 to 10 scale. This rating is just going to be labeled as buggy. Because I think for games like this, that is the most important thing to know about the game itself, sort of like a warning label. After all, some people have been able to beat this game and don't regret playing through it even though the bugs annoyed them. Considering all of that, I think a warning label rating is the most appropriate. I also think it was important to cover the fact that it's got a decent story, decent characters, decent graphics when they're not glitching, and good sound. All of that said, if you do still decide to play this buggy thing, then I suggest sticking to the main quest, and if you want the so-called best ending, only doing the side quests required to get that. That way you lower your chance of having many hours filled with bugs. And can still get what enjoyment you can out of the game. In my opinion, treating it as an open world to explore is going to lead straight to frustration. I also suggest waiting for a sale. Considering how many bugs it's got, I think $6 is a far more reasonable price point than $30. I got it during the winter sale on GOG and I paid about that much. And even then, if I knew how buggy it was, I personally would not have spent the $6.